Welcome to IRG's Health Talk. I'm Tom Hutler along with Shannon O'Kelly, physical therapist and president of IRG Physical and Hand Therapy. And our guest, Dr. Llewellyn Packia Raj, MD, from Swedish Spine, Sports, and Musculoskeletal Medicine. He's board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation, internal medicine, pain management, and sports medicine.
Dr. Packia Raj, welcome back. Good to see you again.
Hey, it's great to be back, Shannon.
Last time you came in, we talked about various types of back pain. I mean, acute, chronic, and things to do during those stages of back pain. And right now, with the weather getting nice and spring's here, I notice, particularly in my neighborhood, a lot of people migrate to the yard. And, whether it's topsoil, mowing lawns, digging new flower beds, you don't really realize because you're doing it on the weekend. It's kind of fun, but you have to be careful because you can cause some problems, particularly with your back. And for example, just the other day, I was mowing my lawn and I'm maneuvering my lawnmower underneath this hedge. And I noticed as I'm rotating and twisting my back and weight bearing kind of oddly with this lawnmower, I tweaked my low back. And luckily it resolved in a couple days. But going out in the yard, working, let's talk about some tips to maintain a healthy back with yard work.
Exactly right, Shannon. It is that time of year when we're trying to go outside and looking at all the damage that winter has wrought upon our yards, and the time turns to getting our yard in shape. And one of the things we got to remember is yard work and gardening is actually pretty physical. And we need to approach it the same way we'd approach doing an athletic activity. If you spend all day in the week, at the office or relaxing, and you go out and spend 8 hours in the yard just pumping it, you're probably going to get hurt.
And you're going to be sore. If you don't prepare, because again, you just mentioned, like any athletic event or activity, if you sit around all winter and not do much because of the rain and the cold weather, then all of a sudden, like I said, you're moving topsoil with the wheelbarrow and shoveling, you can cause problems.
Exactly. So a couple things to look at is first, look at your yard and plan ahead. Try to figure out what needs to get done. Walk around the yard and think about what you need to do and break it up. Don't try to get everything done at once. The weeds will still be there next week. Before you get going, make sure you talk to your healthcare provider and find out about any conditions you have, your heart, your back, your lungs, allergies. Make sure you're just planning ahead and knowing that these things could flare you up, and you want to make sure that you don't do that.
And then know what you're kind of getting into, but also know how to prepare for it. So a warm-up is important too.
Exactly. So just like you'd warm up before you go running, warm up before you go gardening. An easy thing to do is first take a walk around your garden, look at all the work you have to do, then do some light stretching, some jumping jacks, things like that. Whatever you can do to, depending on your conditions, to just get your body warmed up and then prepare for what you're about to get started on.
Yeah, preparation and preparing, because if you're going to be lifting, twisting, and using muscles of your legs, and they're tight, flexibility helps so you can squat, because I think a lot of times people end up, if they're tight in their lower extremities and those muscles a little bit weak, we tend to rely on our back muscles for lifting, and they're really not designed to lift. So if you have a healthy lower extremity, your back is safer.
Exactly right. And as you're out there, one of the things you got to look about is your environment. You're out in the garden, and it could be hot, it could be sunny, so don't forget to wear your hat, don't forget about sunscreen. If it's a hot and sunny day, try not to work in the hottest part of the day. But if you do have to, remember, bring your water with you. Have a bottle of water out there and keep drinking it, because once you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, and dehydration can lead to a lot of problems. The other thing you want to do is make sure you wear good shoes. I see a lot of people out there in their flip-flops gardening, and not only are you going to maybe run into something and step on something, but it actually can cause a lot of problems for your back. So good supportive shoes are necessary. Keep the flip-flops reserved for the beach or in the house.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned that. Just the other night, driving home from work, nice evening, I drive down the neighborhood. Here's a guy out in his lawn, mowing his lawn with flip-flops on and a pair of shorts. Probably not a good idea with flip-flops, but again, good point. Hey, one of the things that I know we all forget to do a lot, and gardening's activity. And, if you're in the sun too long or not hydrating enough, you get fatigued easily. And when your body gets fatigued, you kind of lose all your body mechanics or your sense of body mechanics, because you get sloppy. And when you get sloppy, that's when you get hurt. So hydration's important, huh?
Exactly. And kind of just knowing your limits. If you haven't been out there and you're able to run an hour, gardening and lifting rocks and shoveling and stuff for an hour is going to cause problems. So if you haven't trained for it, don't push it.
How about some specific tips in your experience treating patients and giving patients advice with activity, specific tips for gardening?
The biggest things in gardening: weeding, raking, lifting, and mowing. Weeds, that's a big one. Weeds are all down low, so you got to do a lot of bending, got to do a lot of squatting. Make sure you bend at the waist, bend at the hips. Use one of those rubber mats or stools to sit on the ground. If you have a wheeled gardening stool, these are available at your local hardware stores or gardening centers. Use that. It can save your knees, especially if you have arthritis. Take breaks. Keep your tools in a little bucket. Carry them with you so you don't have to go back and forth. People might squat too and thinking that might be better for their knees, but actually it's not as good. Sitting down is actually better than squatting. Don't be afraid to get a little dirty.
Again, all good points. I mean, my challenge with tools is I forget what I'm working on, and my gardening tools are all spread out over the lawn, and nothing really gets done. But that's an attention deficit problem, and I'll get to that later. Any modified activities for gardening, and or what do you do if you hurt yourself and experience some pain, basically?
Exactly. So if you've had back problems, you can have some tools that are specialized for lifting and gardening, like your buckets and wheelbarrows and wagons, or especially modified rakes and things like that you could use. But sometimes even when you do that, you still might get hurt. And the key thing is, if you hurt yourself, stop. Don't be a hero. The garden will still be there tomorrow. If you have some pain, stop, go inside and take a load off and rest.
How do you feel about, as a therapist, a lot of people ask often is, how do you feel about taking Advil, Aleve, or an over-the-counter anti-inflammatory if you maybe tweaked your muscles in your low back or irritated some soft tissue, basically?
Yeah. So any of those pain medications are reasonable to use as long as your physician has told you that it's safe for you to use them. I wouldn't recommend taking it beforehand and going out and gardening because it can artificially reduce your sense of how much pain you're going to get yourself into. So save it for afterwards if you need it.
And with bending and twisting and lifting, I mean, you described earlier on, like, building a rock wall or whatever you're doing in the yard, pruning a tree. But if you do all of a sudden find yourself doing a lot of bending, twisting, and lifting, I'm thinking about if I have a herniated disc, an acute inflamed or herniated disc where I've got a lot of pressure, signs and symptoms of that, and some red flags and some things. If this happens to you, you should get it looked at soon. I'm kind of talking a cauda equina injury here too.
Definitely. So if your back goes out on you and you're having a lot of back pain, if it's not getting better, if you're having weakness in your legs, numbness in your groin or rectum, numbness around your feet, or having trouble with your bowels or bladder, that's when the time you might want to even go to the emergency room that day and get it checked out. If the pain isn't getting better after you've rested and you're still in a lot of pain after a day or two, definitely get that checked out as well. If you're having new pains that you've never had before, that's also probably a time to get that checked out. One of the things you also want to think about then is consider modifying your garden. Think about raised garden beds, using mulching when possible rather than lifting heavy bags. Consider using low maintenance ground cover like alfalfa or clover. And most importantly, don't be afraid to ask for help. Right. Ask for friends and family and neighbors. And if you need to, it's okay to outsource things that are bigger and heavier tasks.
And maybe get your kids off the Xbox and out in the yard helping you. Maybe not. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, here's a good idea. That's the challenge today, getting other people to help you out. Good point. Hey, a lot of good information. I mean, I don't want to discourage people getting on the yard because it can be relaxing. It's a lot of fun, and it's nice to see what you do during the day and see results of your work. But if you do hurt yourself or have questions, how does someone get a hold of you?
So you can call your local healthcare provider or talk to us at Swedish Spine Sports and Musculoskeletal Medicine. Our phone number is 425-498-2272. Do you have a website? We do. It's swedish.org.
And I think if you go to that website, it's going to ask you to find a provider, and Dr. Packia Raj.
Certainly, or any one of our providers can help you out.
Perfect. Thanks for your information.
My pleasure, Shannon.
If you would like more information on this topic as well as how to contact Dr. Llewellyn Packia Raj, go to swedish.org or go to irgpt.com and click on the Health Experts tab.